Welcome to Contact Has Begun, brought to you by the grace of the World Puja Network, one of the last vestiges of truth concerning benevolent, spiritually, and technologically advanced off-world visitors. Some refer to these visitors as our greater family of man or returning ancient ancestors. I am James Gillen, your host, and our guests also include cutting-edge physicists, authors, teachers, and healers dedicated to the awakening and healing of humanity and the earth. Let the journey begin. Greetings, this is James Gillen with World Puja. We've got a great show today. We've got Henrik Palmgren. He's a filmmaker, radio host, editor, producer, musician, graphic artist, painter, lecturer, and explorer. He's into so many things. He has the Red Ice Creations, Red Ice Radio, and Red Ice TV. And rather than go on and on and on, I want to get him on the show. So, Henrik, are you with us?
I'm with you. Nice to talk to you, James. How are you?
Oh, doing great. It's been a little while since you left here, and there's so many different things we can get into. But one of the things I wanted to ask you in the beginning is what actually inspired you to get into this field, this alternative field of information and oh God, I don't know what you'd call it anymore because it has so many avenues to it. But
that's right.
What brought you into this arena?
I try to think back to that myself and try to wonder what point that there was, because as more as I've been thinking about it, there's actually a few different points. I think the one that kind of brought me over the threshold, though, is 9/11, as it is for so many people in this field. I wasn't. Mm-hmm. I became interested in it in a totally different way at that point, and obviously that brought me into the whole conspiratorial aspect to many of these subjects. But before that, though, there's always been a huge interest since I was very young in terms of UFOs, ET, and I remember picking up a copy of Whitley Strieber's Communion very early on as well, as that was coming out, just actually by seeing the cover and being kind of drawn into that whole thing. And I didn't understand anything about it at that point. I was actually very young. And then I had a collection of books into some of the modern and ancient mysteries from around the world, everything from the Bermuda Triangle to how the pyramids were built to the mythological stories about Atlantis. So the more I think back to it, it's always been kind of there lingering in the background. But then it was really actually after 9/11 where this, for me personally, took a whole nother level, and I began to kind of really study it more intricately and try to get deeper to some of these questions that I had for a very long time. So I would say 9/11, but so many things before that, just mysteries and ET overall. That's a big one for me.
Yeah, I think it's kind of just in some people's DNA, to go after this information, and they're not so easily conditioned or misinformed, because they have that connection or that gut feeling that, wait a second, there's something wrong with this picture.
Exactly, and that's something I've always held as well in terms of school, regular education, and which is obviously when you're young, that's a very troublesome thing because in most cases, parents and society is trying to fit you into this mold, and they're trying to get you to understand and comprehend this society that you're living in and the way that it works. But if you have a kind of a rebellious spirit to that, as you say, James, if that's part of your DNA, your makeup, then it's going to be kind of a troubled road in one way that you go down. But some people manage to kind of stick to that, I think, because it's just part of them and they can never shake that off, while other people seem to slowly kind of lose that ability as they grow older and from their teens and upwards. But I've held on to it, and I stuck to it, and look at the mess we're in now, as they say.
Yeah, I know. It's just unbelievable. I mean, I was talking with several people here, and we're part of that mess ourselves right now because we're dealing with the status quo and society and having to deal with county issues and things like that, and it's amazing that they have decided that we have lost all of our constitutional rights, and we don't have the right to privacy or the right to freedom of speech, the right to practicing our spiritual practices. everything has gone out the door over some little rules and regulations that they make, and which, basically the Constitution is the supreme law of the land, but they feel they are the supreme law of the land, and it's gone into the toilet. But
well, I gotta say, James, being over in the States, recently here, and also obviously visiting you up there at the Esoteric Ranch, which was lovely, by the way. I can only encourage people to go there for themselves and check it out. You were very, took us in, as it were, and showed us around, and it was very nice seeing it. And we did see some interesting things when we were out there and taking a look with the night vision goggles and all that. But what I was going to say was that I still think and still get the feeling, though, that the United States has hold on, although the rights are diminishing, as you say, they still hold that kind of, for the experiment that United States was, they still carry that kind of beacon of freedom, and things are more easygoing, and you have more of an individual ability to act on an individual basis over there, if you would to compare it to other United States, like Europe over here, the United States of Europe, and other parts of the world as well. So although they're diminishing, you guys need to hold on to those things. I still think it's a very good place on Earth to be right now in these times, James.
Oh yeah, I agree. I just think it's time that we stand up, and say enough's enough, because it is an experiment, and the experiment was to create a republic where each person is a king, and as long as you're not harming somebody else or harming the earth or whatever, you should be able to do whatever you want. But they seem to be usurping those rights, and it's been. I know you've covered so many conspiracies. There's so many different things going out there, and I don't even like the word conspiracy anymore, because when you gather the facts, it's not a conspiracy; it's the truth.
Yeah.
And I think the conspiracy is the people that are trying to call it a conspiracy. The mainstream is the biggest conspiracy, and what we're being told, through the mainstream press and through governments and agencies and things like that. But the one of the first things I wanted to get into is the Disclosure Project. What are your feelings as far as what's happening in that arena?
You're specifically talking about Stephen Greer's Disclosure Project, or do you use that as a broader kind of umbrella term, James?
As a total broader umbrella. You've got the exopolitics movements. You've got so many things happening right now.
Well, it is a tricky one, because I feel that at the core and at the root of it, the people who are not kind of too much in the mainstream and working for some kind of disclosure, and I would include Stephen Greer and other people in that. I feel that they are they're genuinely trying to make something really good out of the situation that we're faced with right now. But I also can see at the same time that the establishment, if you will, at this point, is trying to co-opt the movement a little bit and try to use it for their own purposes. It seems like it's almost like they are kind of preparing to unveil ET presence or the reality of UFOs. If we look at some of the things that have been happening lately, we have the whole obviously big thing over in the U.S. with the tampering with the UFOs tampering with the nuclear missiles, shutting down some of these facilities and things like that, which is a big one. But obviously, then we have the whole the planet that they found as well, that was announced here was that a week or so ago now? The astronomers discovered the only 20 light years away, with similar atmosphere and gravity to Earth, and some scientists said that it was 100% chance of life on this planet. I think it was in the Gliese 581 system or something like that. And that's incredible in one way for those who yet not have gotten their head out of the sand, so to speak, when it comes to the reality of extraterrestrial presence out there. But again, this means that it's kind of slowly moving into the mainstream, which is very interesting. Again, it's almost like it turns out to be that 2010 is the year we make contact, because we've made contact now with the idea on the official level that ET is out there. There's some more to add to the story. The Pope's astronomer said he would baptize ET, if they came here. There's other things that the United Nations has appointed a space ambassador to act, for potential first contact. And I know that there's been some back and forth on this question as well. That the lady there name was Maslan Otman, and she was said to have been appointed as this ambassador, but she's denied it. But what we know so far, at least, is that she is the director of the United Nations Office for Outer Space Affairs in the Vienna, and they have this office there. And they claim that they're not directly kind of dealing with the ET question, but more with near-Earth objects and things like that as well. But, the Royal Society has talked about it. So, again, there's just so much in the mainstream about this now. And I think that what we have to be careful about, which people who are, suspicious about why these things are being brought up now, is potentially how the establishment would spin this whole thing and maybe turn it into something of that ET is a threat to humanity, or they try to further actually their own world government agenda, through this, the ET unveiling, if you will. So that's something we have to be careful about, obviously. But, on top of that, even there's so many TV shows now coming out as well. We had revamping of that a while back, Invasion, even Battlestar Galactica in one way, and now the latest one that I saw a couple episodes from recently was from NBC called The Event. I don't know if you've heard about this, James, but in that show, The Event, they have a race of aliens that seem to live longer than human beings, but they look just like us, and they only differ about 1% from humans on Earth or something like that. And obviously, it's a fictional story, but it could be something to that in one sense. If the establishment would could in some way, let's say, genetically modify human beings, to make them look human, but they come out and say that no, they're actually not. We could even be talking about a possible mind control programming or just programming of these individuals that they've modified genetically, and to make them think that they're from another world and what have you. It's obviously to have the control of this, and then eventually they could unleash this on humanity in some way or another and use it for their own purposes. We have to watch this, but there's one more thing to add to this whole story, James. Is in September now this year, there's even been a UFO crash drill at a primary school in the UK called the Stanford Primary School, and there was police was involved and tapes and all these things, and I just put it up on the website. But it's a pretty interesting story that kind of just adds to this whole spin that we see out there, because I definitely personally believe that there's something real to the phenomena, but I also think that we're kind of being treated with potentially kind of a false version of this as well. So it's going to be interesting to see this. But I do believe that the official ET disclosure program is kind of fishy, but those people are working more in the field that we are, if you will. People like Stephen Greer and even Hoagland and some of the lesser maybe known names out there as well. They have a genuine interest in this, and they really want to see some changes taking place because of the potential technology that is involved, free energy results out of this. So we're watching it with interest over on Red Eyes, definitely.
Yeah, I've seen a couple of things. One, I heard Hoagland on Coast to Coast, and he says, I'm going to break the news and bring out something new nobody has talked about, nobody has ever dealt with. And he said the UFOs in antiquity and the ancient history of UFOs and everything else. And he goes, and I'm going to be the one to break this to the UFO community. And I about fell out of my chair because I said, we've been talking about this for 30 years,
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Yeah, and I've given so many presentations, even to the International UFO Congress, all these other things, tied it in with all the ancient religions and everything else. So I think it's amazing that you see these people who are on the forefront of the information, you might say the top of the ladder, you might say, and you wonder, you go, where have they been? And why is this all about you? This is and it's kind of interesting because I know I put in his hand quite a few years ago, probably 10 years ago, I handed him all of this footage, showed these UFOs coming in, interacting with the people on the ground, undeniable, witnesses, everything.